Hello Canada, welcome back to another edition of the Canadian Citizen Journal. I'm your host, Alias Tagay. Well, there's a pile of stuff going on here. This whole budget is absolutely atrocious. We're going to break down what I like to do best, which is propaganda, and just kind of throw a bunch of links together that nobody's really seems to be talking about, although everything is literally right in the open. From that, we're just going to dabble onto the atrocities that happen at the ostrich ranch. This is so sad. I've dealt in caring, raising, and being part of a ranch that raised elk and bison. And through that, I've worked with, and if you're a new viewer, this is why I'm explaining to you. My full-time subscribers will already know that I've talked about this before. I've linked up with our own provincial vets, government vets, and got to know them quite well. And they enjoyed not only my knowledge of dealing with wildlife, the fact that I'm willing to also study and learn, but my moral integrity when it comes to the right way to care for animals. Animal husbandry is it's something that it takes time, patience, and a lot of knowledge to understand. And what happened at that ostrich ranch, there should be charges laid for animal cruelty. And we're going to dig down to a letter that was released from somebody kind of affiliated with that, with a lot of expertise, and, well, hopefully get the word out. Now, media is suffering pretty hardcore here. So the U.S. broadcast TV and radio station industry is projected to lose another 9.3% decline in total revenue. They're saying that Canada is, percentage-wise, is 15% higher to that. People are starting to catch on that state-funded media is propaganda. Which, like I said, I'm going to break this down for this whole, floor-crossing bull crap that went on. The biggest hit is cable, satellite cable, and print news. Because now people can go online, and thanks to amazing people like you, are actually starting to show the truth and have the ability to share it with other people, especially small, independent citizen journalists like myself who put all the facts in the description. So I'm not just throwing and I don't do this, and it pees me off if you follow somebody and they've got Trump is annexing Canada today, and you click on it and there's nothing at all about that, quit watching them. That's called clickbait. And 9 times out of 10, those are the people that they don't put the links in the bottom. And even though it may be, if you're a conservative, if you're a liberal, your views, if they're not willing to show you the evidence or the proof, or at least have the integrity, the moral fortitude to title what is actually in the show without clickbaiting, chasing that little placard, quick monetization, they're all propaganda as far as I'm concerned. Now, we're going to dabble on that, this whole no poppies, courtroom crap, and we'll see how time goes. I'm going to try to kind of just weave myself through this as quick as possible. And the biggest kicker that nobody's talking about is how our new fascist government, and they have just become a fascist government, is pushing for conscription. This is how they are going to force Canadians into military service in order to fulfill their NATO agreements, all while they continue to bankrupt generations. It was 5 generations to pay off this debt. If this budget goes through, it's 6. If they get a majority government and they fulfill another 4 years, there's economists out there that are saying we will never be debt free. We will always be paying more interest than the services itself get money from the government. We're going backwards. So for all you out there who voted and say, oh, I want this and I want that, you're destroying Canada. And I'm going to show you how the Liberal Party, well, just these people study Marxism, Stalin, all of the evils in the world. They saw what they did that worked in order to keep them in power, and they've perfected it. And now that they own mainstream, people, we're on the cusp of losing everything that it is to be Canadian. And you can see it live on the streets in real time every day. And if we have time, I'm going to show you a video of just another lady who came to this country and, she's leaving after her house got broke into with people with illegal firearms. Now, let's get started on this. Now, I know a lot of people have already talked about this. I'm just going to put it out there and make sure that you have the link to get to it. This is Fitch Ratings. Now, I'm going to read this off to you and listen very carefully to what they have to say. So, Fitch Ratings, New York, London, blah, 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 stating Canada's AA plus stable proposed budget announcement in Parliament on November 4th underscores the erosion of the federal government's finances. While Canada's rating is broadly stable, persistent fiscal expansion and a rising debt burden have weakened its credit profile and could increase rating pressure over the medium term. This may be exacerbated by persistent economic underperformance caused by tariff risks and structural challenges, including low productivity, which if you're new to a viewer, check out the previous episodes. I deal on this often. Our productivity has just plummeted, and this is one of the major issues we're having. But it happens because you have a government who's pushing the socialist ideal rather than the idea of freeing people to have the ability to make money. You restrict them and point them to things they have to do. You take away the independence of the citizen, the free thought, the entrepreneurial vision from people, and society collapses. Budget 2025 substantially increases capital expenditure while moderating growth in operating expenditures and delivering modest savings. Coinciding with a weak economy, the budget expands the forecast federal deficit to $78.3 billion, 2.5% of our GDP for the fiscal year ending March 2026. Up from our prior estimate of $70.4 billion. Now, again, previous episodes, the budget office has come out, and when they were warning Canada, now this is how propaganda wins. They should be talking about this, and they're not. The PBO office came out and said, at a $68 billion deficit, we were launching ourselves off a cliff. In other words, $68 billion was already too far to reel it in. And this is how I just finished stating 3 minutes ago. This is the idealism of, especially if these people get a majority government, a 4-year mandate to keep doing what they're doing. Canada is done. It's done. So these translate into general government deficit of 3.3% GDP, which is higher than the AA medium of 2.3 and substantially higher than Canada's pre-pandemic deficits, which averaged 0.4% in the 2 decades prior to 2019. We expect the general government deficit to improve to 2.2 by 2027, assuming a partially successful execution of the government's planned reduction in program expenses. Combined with sizable non-budgetary financial needs, mainly support to enterprise crown corporations, the higher deficits will substantially increase general government gross debt, which we forecast to reach 91.8% of GDP in 2025, from 88.6% in 2024, before accelerating to 98.5% in 2027, nearly double the forecast AA medium of 49.6%. The budget aims to shift focus from current capital expenditures as part of the government's plan to bolster investment and improve perennial economic challenges over the next 5 years. The budget's target $280 billion in capital expenditure, $450 billion on a cash basis for housing, $25 billion to address productivity growth, $110 billion in infrastructure, $115 billion while increasing defense expenditure, and the policy aims to unlock up to $500 billion in private investment through targeted government programs. However, despite the government's comprehensive expenditure review and substantial increases in capital expenditure, the budget only proposes to cut $60 billion in spending over 5 years, the bulk of which comes from civil service reductions of around 10%. Key social programs established under former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, such as pharmacare, supposedly will be protected. Now, it goes on and it pretty much just states the fact that they're all the same people in there. They've never met any of their obligations. It's the same promise that they've had since the first year they came into office. And while, however, the Canadian government has a track record of upward deficit revisions with subsequent budget updates consistently worse than prior projections, given that these rules are non-binding and prior versions have been ignored, federal finances run a high risk of further deterioration. Most recently, for instance, the government breached all 3 Budget 2024 guideposts, which included, number 1, capping the federal deficit at $40 billion. They did it again this year. Maintaining a declining debt to GDP ratio. They did it again this year. And shrinking deficits. They blew over that again this year. Now you got to remember, they were proposing a some $40 billion deficit and everybody lost their heads. It's the end of the world. And then it was rumored that it could be $60 billion and they're like, we got to throw Trudeau to the fire, blah, 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 blah. It's the same government, people. Your great grandchildren will still be paying off this debt, and it's only going to accelerate because this has happened to us before with the first Trudeau. That debt caused huge inflation. The Bank of Canada could not hold it back. Next thing you know, we saw 16%, 18% interest rates crushed our country. All of the ravens and buzzards like Carney and their bankers, this is what they wanted, because they came in and they swooped up all the properties that people were walking out of. Big banks were taking over huge swaths of houses and property. They made out with not only huge interest charges, but the forfeitures and walkaways of all of these people who suffered the consequences, well, of a socialist government or a banker government, because it's all the same. They think the same. They don't care about you. Now, the truth of the matter, and I've talked about this, and I've tried to warn Canadians, I'm still growing, so make sure you like, share, and subscribe. I'd really like to see that 1,000 subscribers if that's possible. I get censored hardcore. Why? Because I speak the truth. Sorry, so sorry, just the truth, just the facts. Carney is making money hand over foot. This is the most compromised, unethical breach within our political system in the history of our nation. There's a lot of independents out there that are trying to get the word out. And congratulations, by the way, to Rebel News. They successfully are now the 5th most popular viewed news agency in Canada. They surpassed, well, one by one, they're knocking off the propaganda. So, Ezra, cheers. All of you at Rebel for doing what you do. And throw a shout out to Juno and like a lot of great independents out there. Make sure that you like, share, and subscribe to them, people. This is how we break the censorship algorithms. This is how we stop this government from lying openly and blatantly to the people because they believe what they see on CBC and CTV. The Liberals' $1 trillion green growth plan is padding the pockets of elites like Carney's former company, while ordinary Canadians get stuck with soaring bills. Minister of Environment and Climate Change, Julie DeBruson, and Energy Minister Tim Hodgson unveiled the federal government's latest net zero rebrand yesterday at Toronto's Pearl Street Energy Centre, coined the climate competitiveness strategy. The Liberals sell a $1 trillion debt plan as an investment and government-subsidized green market initiatives as moral imperatives. Yeah, investing in a clean future is both morally imperative and the greatest commercial opportunity of our time, the strategy reads. As the world moves towards net zero, Canada's climate competitiveness will define Canada's leadership on the world stage. By 2035, the clean technology market will triple and demand for clean electricity will double. To compete, Canada's investment must keep pace. Now, all of this coming from, well, this.
As Brazil prepares to host tens of thousands of climate summit delegates later this year, there is visible evidence that the building work is causing deforestation. Tens of thousands of acres of protected forests of the Amazon have been deforested to make way for a new 4-lane highway, as our South America correspondent Ione Wells now reports.
This is going to be a highway, and this is where it's being built. Slicing through the Amazon rainforest. Protected land, until now. Claudio Verrececci made his living from harvesting acai berries here. Those trees were cut down.
We no longer have the income to support our family. Our fear is someone will come here and say, we're going to need this area to build a gas station, to build a warehouse that will be used by trucks, and then we will have to leave here. We were born and raised here in this community. Then, where are we going to go?
The government here have made a big deal about this COP summit being in the Amazon, about the need to protect the Amazon, but preparations for the summit have already cut down some of the last remaining protected forest in this area. Scientists fear this could disrupt ecosystems. This clinic, just meters from the new road, treats wild animals. Most, like this sloth, are injured by humans or cars.
We are going to lose an area to release these animals back into the wild, which is the natural environment of these species. It does directly affect the conservation of these animals. Land animals will no longer be able to cross to the other side too, reducing the areas where they occur.
The state government says the highway is sustainable, important for mobility, and will have solar lighting and cycle paths. It's one of many projects to get the city ready to host tens of thousands of people. There's a new city park and conference centre. Hotels being frantically built. The port preparing to hold cruise ships to sleep more people. The small airport will be more than tripled in size.
Again, I urge you to check out my previous episodes, but I broke this down on how even some of the companies that were involved in doing this, Brookfield, as well as a couple other of these so-called greens that are all semi-invested to each other. The people in the city, because of propaganda, have no idea what's going on in the rural areas. They literally booted the people off. There are tribes that have been evicted from that property. So now you've created land disputes, kind of like what you see is going on here in Canada, where the first come, first serve, the ones that are the closest to the reigning regime, they'll secure properties and they'll smother the rights of all of the rest of them in order to say, well, no, my indigenous tribe, we were here, this is our land, blah, blah, blah. Go out, get the votes, sell for the party, make a scene, get up there, wear your whole costume, hey, and sell it. In the meantime, the people who actually live there are going, wait a minute, what do you mean you bulldozed my house? What do you mean you bulldozed my gathering and hunting areas, let alone completely ruined one of the last protected areas that had very unique and specific traits of an ecosystem that is now, well, they can say they didn't destroy it, they sliced it in half. But like the reporter was stating, this is the demise, because now this entire little ecosystem that was there, unique to its own area, like unique in the gigantism of what is Brazil, it was a completely different ecosystem, has now been destroyed and removed from the face of the planet. So for now on, we're just going to call it the actual clear-cut summit, because that's what it was. Now, we're going to dabble onto this. This is how propaganda works. Everybody's been kind of jumping here and there. I'm going to put the pieces together. And I'm just going to kind of throw it to you and do what I normally do, which is kind of do the whole weaving and kind of bring it all together. Let's take a close listen to propaganda.
We'll talk more about the substance of the budget a little bit later, but Budget 2025 was barely tabled when Nova Scotia Conservative MP Chris D'Entremont resigned from caucus, defected.
Did you see what she did? The media was losing their shit when the previous budget that nobody wanted to talk about, or put in place, they ended up throwing it in the table in the middle of Parliament because it was way over the $40 billion that they had promised. This is Chrystia Freeland and in fact, Carney himself refused to come over. They asked him, he refused. He said, "No, I don't want to. I'm getting into politics. I don't want to be no part of this insane budget, this complete waste of money." That was news at once because they were working. This is propaganda, people. This is how it works. So now all of a sudden there's bigger news than the fact that, well, all of our children, grandchildren's great-great-great-great-great-grandchildren are now going to be screwed if this budget passes. It's that bad. But oh, no. We're going to push a completely different news cycle because they need to do what they do best. They need to take out another leader of the Conservative Party.
Defecting to the Liberals in a stunning blow to Pierre Poilievre and his party. The huge move gives the Carney government one more vote to get this budget passed through Parliament and potentially avoid an election. Chris D'Entremont is now the Liberal MP for the Nova Scotia riding of Acadie-Annapolis, and he joins me now this Sunday for his first broadcast interview since Tuesday's floor crossing. Good morning, Chris D'Entremont.
Good morning to you.
You have sat as a Conservative politician, federally and provincially, for about 2 decades now. You were a provincial cabinet minister. After all that time, how do you explain to folks in your riding that actually you've changed your colors? You're a Liberal now.
Well, I mean, it's situational. We get elected to represent the best issues of our ridings as people come forward, and sometimes we have to make decisions that are hard and tough. And I felt that in this particular case, it was better to be a part of the government caucus than it was to be sitting in the opposition. And I'm hoping, as time goes on, that the constituents in Acadie-Annapolis will understand that decision.
You had that private meeting that we have reported on with the Prime Minister. Was that what sealed the decision for you, or had you already made up your mind?
All right.
Well, not only are we neighbors, but we've been friends for 2 decades through politics, mainly through politics. And certainly when you get elected together, you are become even closer, right? Because it's a team sport and you're fighting the battles together. And because Chris chose to seek in the last Parliament the position of being Speaker, and he ended up being Deputy Speaker, he and I worked closely together to make sure that while his voice was muted, because in Parliament, once you're Deputy Speaker, you can't get into the partisan statements, that I worked closely with him in his riding to make sure his interests were represented in Parliament, but also back in the riding on the primary issue of the fishery. And what's important to understand for all those folks watching, is the commercial fishery is our largest industry in Nova Scotia, and 25% of the value of the entire Canadian fishery on all three coasts is in my riding and Chris's riding combined. I have 7,000 commercial fishermen alone in my riding. So those issues and the destruction of that industry by the Liberals over 10 years and has been an incredible economic harm to our area. In fact, some of your viewers probably remember about 2020, there was the burning down of a lobster pound. That was in Chris's riding in relation to all the illegal fishing that was happening in a place called St. Mary's Bay in Chris's riding. So I worked hard. I invited his constituents to committee. In fact, a year ago, I had his constituents in camera committee because of the threats to their lives and the lawlessness in Chris's riding. I brought them to Ottawa, and they explained the terrorism, the gunshots into their house, how they were living in hiding, how there was total lawlessness, and the Liberals were doing nothing to stop it. And Chris was thankful for that. So he's joined a party that has done everything it can to destroy his own riding. But I'm babbling here a bit, but because I'm passionate about this issue. 3 weeks ago, the rumors started that Chris might be crossing the floor. I heard about them. There were mysterious comments out there about maybe 3 Conservatives crossing the floor, one from Atlantic Canada. So I reached out to Chris. I said, tell me you're not thinking about crossing the floor, because I know he's had a bruised ego since the resumption of Parliament on an issue we can talk about. And he was in Europe on a parliamentary thing. He said, that's crazy Ottawa stuff. Of course not. I've spoken to him a bunch of times over the last 3 weeks, including this past weekend, where I phoned him only a couple days ago and said, looks like there's a chance the budget might fall. So I'm getting my campaign team ready. Chris, are you getting yours? And he said to me, Rick, if an election happens over the budget, I'll lose my seat. I've won 8 elections. I might as well not run because I don't want to lose. So for Chris, he had given up long ago. And this floor crossing on principle really wasn't about that. It was about preserving the job he thinks he can preserve by staying in the other side. And he's been asked, what did you get? You've probably seen it on social media. He must have got promised something. And he was asked that by our leadership team yesterday. You know, normal thing, cabinet job. Well, I don't think Chris would want a cabinet job because it's a lot of work and he's not the hardest working man in show business. But Chris got a few shekels. What he got, apparently, is a little bit of money to repair a couple of wharves in his riding. So his price was cheap.
Let's get back to this.
Going into that conversation.
No, I mean, this has been a thought for a long time, basically from the election, hearing from longtime supporters that wouldn't support me anymore because of the leadership style of the Conservative Party. So, been thinking about it a lot. And, I think people saw that I wasn't being utilized within my party and they were reaching out. And when I had that meeting with the Prime Minister, because I really hadn't had the opportunity to meet Mr. Carney before, that did help a lot in making it clearer of what I wanted to do. But I tell you, what really made it, what sealed the deal is when I got yelled at when this became part of the news on Tuesday.
Okay, there is a lot to unpack there, but I want to be clear. You said...
Okay, so everybody had a feeling they knew who the one person was. They figured it was him. They're sitting down in the House when their phones start going off when one or two of the MPs see an article from Politico. All of a sudden, the gig is up. Now, this is Liberals using propaganda. Now, whether or not he was aware of it, I don't think he was. I think they already threw him under the bus. And he had no choice. He had no choice but to cross over. Now, not to say that he wasn't going to. More than likely, he was going to, because all he cares about is money. He doesn't care about you. He only cares about his paycheck. These are the politicians that, believe it or not, Poilievre has been trying to get out of the Conservative Party. This is why they restructured like they did, especially after O'Toole. Scheer did a great job starting this domino effect. And again, the media hammered after him. Dual citizenship and the abortion and all the rest. All nothing burgers. But propaganda went after him. They tried everything to destroy his credibility. This is how propaganda works. And now they're doing it again because they know an election could be coming. This is all part of the game. So now we know Politico was the ones who released this article. They did it early, and they did it at a very strategic time. Interesting. And then what happens that night? Well, Champagne's budget and Prosecco Prudence at the Met. They had a great big party. Interesting. Finance Minister Champagne takes a victory lap at the Metropolitan Brasserie on November 4th at Politico and Earnscliffe Strategies post-budget party. Politico. Propaganda. Do you see? This is all bought and paid for. This is CBC, CTV, Globe. This is anybody who takes money from the government. This is the crap you're going to see. This was a setup, people. They already threw Detremont under the bus. They already took him and threw him under the bus and put him in a hell of a spot. His career is over. And now they've got him spewing lies.
You weren't being utilized, or people were telling you weren't being utilized with the Conservatives. Did the Liberals suggest that there's more opportunity on their side of the floor, that you could be a contender for a cabinet spot, for example?
No, absolutely not. I think it was just looking at the mechanisms that they have. They would talk about, the caucus that we have here in Nova Scotia, the way caucus worked, what kind of input caucus was able to have in developing the budget. Those are all things that really don't happen over in the Conservative caucus. And quite honestly, this is a time in Canada where we should be really looking at building and trying to find ways to, counteract tariffs and everything else that's going on in the world. It's a time to work together. And, over the summer, I didn't see an opportunity, or I didn't see a move to work together. All I saw was more division and more anger, and I wasn't going to be a part of that anymore.
Okay, so again, that's an absolute lie. The most democratic party out of every single one is the Conservatives. It's like the only party you can vote to remove the leader in. That's how democratic they are. You can't do that with the Liberals. This is why they couldn't get rid of Trudeau. And then they had the chance to bring that back into the Liberal Party, because it was changed when the Socialists took over the party 10 years ago. And they voted, no, we're not going to do that. Why would you do that? Everything he's saying is an absolute lie.
You fight hard in an election campaign. The day before the debates in the national campaign asked me to launch, because Pierre was preparing, launch our national fisheries policy. We were the only party with a platform on the commercial fishery. We were surrounded in my riding. Actually, it was Halifax West. It used to be in my riding, but under redistribution, it went to Halifax West. We were surrounded. All the candidates were there. Chris D'Entremont stood beside me to do the French side of it. And we were surrounded by fishermen in that community. And obviously, a big part of that was pointing out the destruction of this industry. And Chris quite gladly stood up there and was proudly part of making that pitch in the campaign as a Conservative. And when you're elected, you can let your ego run away with you and think you're all that, and that it's you that got you there. The reality is, as we know, most people vote by party and by leader. And Chris would say after the election, he only won by 553 votes because His margin would have been better, but Pierre dragged him down. He said today and yesterday, when he made his announcement yesterday, he said Pierre never came to his riding in the campaign. Well, which way is it, Chris? Was Pierre a drag? If he was a drag, why did you want him to your riding in the election campaign? You obviously wanted him in the riding in your election campaign because you felt you were going to lose, and you thought the presence of Pierre Poilievre in your riding would boost you over the edge. And the reality is he only won by 553 votes because of Pierre Poilievre and his work to support what we've done in rural communities, in the fishing communities, and the cost of living, which is acute in rural Atlantic Canada.
Now, propaganda likes to try to hammer. So they're trying to kneecap the Conservative Party in order to keep the Liberals in power, in order to keep their paychecks rolling. Here's the truth, people. Strong Conservative support for Poilievre ahead of leadership review. A new survey suggests Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre is here to stay, with no other Tory contender currently able to outperform him. In fact, most would do worse. As always, I post all of the links down there. You can scroll over and you can read this. I don't know of a single person who has changed their views on Poilievre at all. In fact, watching the propaganda go on and on, I'm finding it's actually strengthening the people's support behind him, because they're seeing what Poilievre says and has said happen. They're witnessing everything that Poilievre has warned Canadians about for 15 years happen. Mainstream, no. We gotta take out the leader. If we can create a crisis, if an election is called, it'll favor the people who pay our bills, which is the Liberals. The Liberals love to pay propaganda. And by the way, it's in the budget.
You said that what really clinched the decision for you was getting yelled at. Can you tell us a little bit more about what you mean?
Well, I mean, I'm sure when the political issue came out, everybody had that on their phone by budget time. You know, I had the leader of the House leader and the whip barge into my office, push my assistant aside, rush in, push, take the door and just push it wide open.
Now, rumor has it, there may actually be a lawsuit or two going about this, that the police may actually already have been called in order to verify that this is not true, because he is already circumvented back and has changed. Now you got to go deep to find the CBC correction on this. This never happened. Do you notice how she pushed? Yeah.
To sit there and tell me how much of a snake I really was, and turning my back on my constituents and the people that voted for me, and really underline the situation that I made this decision. This was not. It wasn't about, hey man, maybe you're not doing well. Maybe we've misunderstood what your objectives were. There was none of that. It was just, how dare you do that? How dare you? And it really pushed me to a point where it's like, okay, well, I guess my decision is made for sure now.
I interviewed Andrew Scheer this Friday on the House, and he suggested that you left because you're mad that the Conservatives didn't make you Deputy Speaker.
All right, well, we got lots more to go through here, and I'm running out of time. This guy's a schmuck. He's an absolute spineless waste of skin. Everything that he has said in the past has all been lies. If you're going to flip over that fast for a mild amount of money into your constituency, and a guarantee, which he still doesn't have, that he's going to remain in his seat for a few more years in order to get that beaucoup pension, then the guy's spineless. Now, I am against floor crossing. Always have been. I do believe that rather than crossing the floor, if you choose that your leader is like gone and you don't believe in what they're doing, you should immediately have an election. You should voice your opinion, and if you are really good and your constituents believe you, you'll get voted back in as either an independent or liberal or conservative or NDP or whoever you decide to join afterwards. But you can't take morally, with any type of soul, the hard-earned money and time from a political party, from the people who actually gave you that seat, and throw it all away and remain a sitting MP. Now, this is probably the biggest debate that's come from this. This has to be dealt with. But I don't think either party will deal with it, because it puts too much power into the democracy. And we know how politics works in Canada. Our Westminster systems have been abused. I mean, we're out of all the countries that deal in the same system, we're at the bottom of the barrel for trying to correct the system. Bottom of the barrel. We just abuse it. It's horrible. This guy needs to have an election. He needs to say, hey, okay, I'm going to run as an independent, because he can still vote Liberal if he wants. That's fine. Hell, even as a conservative, he could have kept his conservative and said, no, I'm going to vote with the Liberals. He could have done that even, but he didn't. This is all done for himself. This is a child, people. This guy is a useless piece of, well, he's just useless. Now, I want to make sure to show you this, because this is imperative. And again, I'll post the link so you can watch it in its entirety. Do you want to see an absolute, like, just an insult to the sector that has built our country and paid for every single social service you get?
Why can't we go even higher? Let's use the energy sector as an example.
Yep.
There are a lot of things that are preventing them from even bringing a major project to your office, according to them, Bill C-69 emissions cap.
Nope.
I mean, that's what they say.
That's what they say, but they're wrong.
Why?
Yeah, they're wrong. No, they're wrong, because literally we are getting projects coming in. We're in discussions with the province of Alberta directly on things. But look, we've also got a view that, as shared by the government of Alberta in the Grand Bargain, I'm going to quote the Premier of Alberta, that the future of oil export is going to be low carbon. So twinning additional, in that case, oil sands development with carbon capture makes sense. By the way, it also helps create a multi-billion-dollar industry for Canada. But
that he makes money off of, people. That he makes money off of. So he's going to try and buy Alberta votes. He's going to try and give Alberta something. He's going to throw a bone to try and, ready? Get the ball. This is what Liberals do. It won't be what Alberta needs. It'll be what he needs. Just enough to hold a couple seats so he can remain in government and keep raking tax dollars into his private coffers and the businesses that he's invested with and all of his buddies are invested with. I'm waiting to see what drops, and I'm waiting to see what Danielle Smith's got to say on this. I have a lot of respect for Danielle Smith, but we'll see.
Say energy. Look, we are in a position where the country can grow its grid, clean grid. Our grid is basically clean, 85%. Can grow our grid 50% over the course of the next decade, 15 years. That is an enormous amount of investment. We're talking about $150 billion of investment. Think of the scale of the nuclear investment that's likely to happen, that we will, with the province of Ontario, some other provinces, Alberta, Saskatchewan likely, we will help advantage and get going. So sometimes this discussion about energy pivots down into, is this pipeline going to happen? That is, I mean, don't worry, we look at those issues. It is a totally different ballgame. You look at the scale, sorry, now you've got me on a run. because you look at the scale of LNG exports that are going to come. The first shipment of LNG to Asia was in June from LNG 1. We'll be at 50 million tons by the end of this decade. It's likely to double by the end. And every single jurisdiction, I was in Asia last week, every single government wants that LNG. Right? We're in a position, we are putting ourselves in a position to export that. And by the way, that LNG, which will displace coal in most cases, so there's environmental benefit, it is in most cases top quartile, if not top decile, low emission, scope 1, scope 2. So in other words, the liquefaction, other processes are clean, and we're advantaging that with our tax proposals in the budget.
One of my questions was, is this pipeline going to come? So
it's so boring.
It's not actually.
It is.
For
it is.
a
No, but
big
it
part
is.
of the
It is
country.
because it's. Look, it's. Don't worry. We're on it. We're on it. Like we're on it.
And
but
who's
there is
showing
this
up to
whole
that
world.
party?
Okay, hands up. Who's working on the pipeline in this room? Okay.
Isn't
Right.
that a problem?
No. Look at all the variety. Like, Nav, like, does your like it's. We have.
Yeah, if there's more prosperity, they'll get more cell phone services.
But look. Okay, so what's going to drive one of the things with? Yeah, don't worry. We're on the pipeline stuff. Danielle's on line 1. Don't worry, it's going to happen. But well, something's going to happen. Let's put it that way. It's not very good negotiating by my perspective. But what?
Every single person in there, they're all, free healthcare. Who do you think paid for that and made that possible? Our energy resource sector. Every single service you have, the major proponent that pays for those services is the resource sector. He is mocking Canada. He doesn't care. He doesn't care. He loves the post-national state. He loves the fact that now he is in a position, especially with the rules that he has helped to implement through the complete idiocracy of Trudeau and the Liberals that still surround him, that are going to create the monopolies that he is profiting off of now and is going to join the billionaire club with in a few years. This is evil, people. Bankers should never be allowed to be politicians, let alone prime ministers or presidents.
Some in the room will unlock on the data center side, the intelligence infrastructure side, will have a much bigger impact on productivity in this country. Will have a much bigger impact on our standard of living.
So 1,000 computers with 5 employees is going to have more productivity and push more productivity than 1,000 workers and 300,000 sub-workers involved in a resource sector. Is that so, Carney? Everything this guy is saying is a blatant lie. There is zero economic math to what he is saying. Zilch. Nada. But don't worry, this is Carney's agenda. And again, previous episodes, they've made us into the 51st state. The Liberal Party, Trudeau, every single one of these completely incompetent children that are still in his same Liberal Party, as well as him, if they were real Canadians and they really believed what they were doing, they would have invested all of their money in all of the Canadian pension plans on what they were proposing and putting forward in Canada. The fact that they took all of your pensions and invested in blood oil outside of Canada while we crushed our own should tell you they're selling your soul and you're letting them do it. Disgusting.
So, one of the first things that you do is you don't proceed with policies like the oil and gas emissions cap that has been proposed federally and also here. Energy is our number one export. It's also our highest productivity industry. If you...
Oh, I'm sorry. A real economist. Sorry, Carney. You just got caught lying.
put a cap on emissions, you're effectively putting a cap on production. There are other ways to manage domestic emissions, but putting an explicit cap on and hobbling your number one export is just going to make us all poorer.
I'll be damned. Lo and behold, when the truth comes out, that's just the truth. Sorry, so sorry. And now here's something that the media has been slowly desensitizing Canadians to. And this is, again, propaganda. This is how it works. Now, in the budget, and through, this is all buried, people. This is what they don't want you to know. The government is actually working in order to force military service on Canadians. And this is propaganda. Propaganda 101. Canadian military wants mobilization plan in place to boost reserves to 400,000 personnel. The Canadian Forces has established a Tiger team to look at how such a massive influx can be achieved, as the current reserve strength only stands at 28,000. Now, there is a great little clip here.
Apparently that Tiger team for this Defence Mobilization Plan, DMP, was stood up at National Defence Headquarters on Carling campus on June 4th, 2025. No additional details were provided to the Ottawa Citizen, and no comments were provided as to the progress made to date. However, General Carignan and DM Beck pointed out that their initiative would require a whole-of-society engagement, which means that the Department of National Defence will not be acting alone to achieve this lofty goal. One clue as to where they are headed with this is an acknowledgement that the CAF Tiger team will be consulting allies, such as Finland, for their expertise in maintaining large standing military reserve forces. For the record, Finland's solution is the fact that military service is mandatory for all males and voluntary for females.
This is how they're going to try and meet the NATO 5% target. They're going to send your children to war. Even if you are totally against, well, like the government we have today, and you don't want to be part of any of the evil that they perpetrate on the world in the name of their climate zealotism or the whole Nazis in Ukraine. Too bad, so sad. Your children are now a dollar figure. Yeah. And they've been brainwashing the public for this. For months. For months this has been going on. I started watching these going, that's kind of odd, a little out of the blue. But again, I'm trained in propaganda. Little things stand out. And lo and behold, there it is. Canada has far too few soldiers. Here's a radical fix. Mandatory service. March 15th, 2025. Surveys suggest Canadians are open to mandatory service for those under 30, as long as it's not military. Slowly keep pacifying. August 11th, 2025. Just keep repeating it over and over. Propaganda, trying to convince, when in actuality, when these polls were brought in, they had to take a back step, and that's where this little ad came out. Because it was actually, the majority of them were opposed to it, like 57%. There was only like 23% in favor. But it didn't end. They kept going. They kept going, and they kept going, trying to brainwash the people. This is what propaganda does. The Current,
Hello, I'm Matt Galloway, and this is The Current Podcast. So here's an idea for you. What if every Canadian between the ages of 18 and 30 had to give a year of their life to the country? Could be planting trees, helping in long-term care or disaster response, or joining the military.
This is propaganda. It's being used against you every single day. Your own tax dollars are paying these media outlets, these mouthpieces, for a totally fascist, idealistic government, people.
Civilian service is popular. A survey from Angus Reid shows 7 in 10 Canadians support the idea.
Help out your community, give back to the people that gave to you while you were growing up. Working towards more community.
It's liberals. They'll start off with this whole, well, it doesn't have to be military, that'll be one option. But once they pass this, We see what liberals do, just like the censorship laws, just like everything else they've ever done, including the whole vaccine mandates. We've seen what they do. They have a totalitarian ideology. This is brainwashing people, propaganda. Oh, but you can go into health services. Oh, but guess what? Those health services put you in a uniform and get you sent to Ukraine. Get you sent to some third world country. This is brainwashing. And now in the meantime, here's the reality of Canada. This is Canada.
Are you surprised that didn't deter them? Like, you did all the security, you had all the safety.
Yeah, but I realized that they don't care about this.
Mariam Alavi Nassab brought her 2 daughters to Canada from Iran 7 years ago. She bought a home near York Mills in Leslie, which she gutted and redesigned herself. But last Wednesday, her dream home became the scene of a traumatic home invasion, a real-life nightmare she won't soon forget.
I can't live here anymore.
It was 3:40 a.m. when 4 masked suspects got in through her back patio doors. They went upstairs and into her 12-year-old daughter's bedroom, where Alavi Nassab was asleep next to her child on a mattress on the floor.
I remember that somebody, put the gun on my neck and asked me, where is the safe? 2 men came to my daughter's room. It was the scariest moment.
Where is it? Alavi Nassab says given English is not her first language, she was confused. She eventually understood and told them there was no safe. But not believing her, they took her into her closet, which had already been ransacked. Then down to the main floor and to the garage, looking for a safe. The chaos all captured on video surveillance.
But they couldn't believe me, and they keep hitting me with the gun and, hurt me and, asking me where is the safe.
After 6 minutes inside, the intruders suddenly left, making off with handbags, jewelry, and money. They did not take the Range Rover, despite the fact Alavi Nassab says she offered them the keys. She then learned her 18-year-old daughter, who had been pretending to sleep, had called 911 while the thieves were downstairs.
She went to her bathroom and locked the door and called 911. But she said that she stays in the line nobody answered the phone.
For how long?
4 to 5 minutes, or maybe 3 to 4 minutes. I don't remember exactly, but
she was on hold.
She was on hold. No one picked up the phone.
Alavi Nassab is also upset that no one from police has offered her family support, except for the day of the crime.
I moved here for a better life, for a safe life, and I don't feel safe anymore. And I was thinking that maybe somebody calls me and asks me, do you need anything? Do you have any place to go?
In a statement to Global News,
the police come out. Oh no, we offered that, and oh, it was only 2 minutes, and this is Canada. This is your post-national state. This is what the Liberal Party wants, people. This is the new liberalism. Now I'm going to read a letter. This is a CFI policy expert, Harvey Sasaki, one of the most respected voices in agriculture and farming across Canada, and he's provided his professional public input on the Universal Ostrich Farm and failed CFIA's policies. Now, I'm not going to show you any of the video. It's disgusting what happened. You can find it online. I'm so ashamed. I'm so ashamed that there are so many Canadians out there that they look at this and laugh. That the media is saying, oh, this was done for the safety of mankind. When people like myself have shown video, they were out there while the ostriches were pecking at these officers. No hazmasks, no masks on their face, nothing. This is all lies, people. This is the truth. The CFI's notable avian flu influenza hazard specific plan, CTFI policy, was last updated in July 2013 and has not been further updated to reflect cases and experiences in 2014, 15, 16, 19, 2021, and 2025. The primary focus and outbreaks have involved commercial poultry premises, with many located in highly populated communities. While the policy has served its purpose to protect commercial poultry and maintain continuity in the supply of poultry products to Canadians, experience being gained from discoveries in non-commercial species and wild mammalian species a reflection on the applicability of the current policy and practice of ordered destruction of infected bird flocks. The current CFI policy fails to recognize the need to re-examine its applicability in non-commercial bird species with the intent of enhancing its knowledge base and future management practices for outbreak management in Canada. It is apparent from the Universal Ostrich Farms case that herd immunity has been achieved based on the lack of educational ostrich mortalities on the farm. Ostrich mortalities on the farm. This creates a unique opportunity in Canada to expand our knowledge and understanding of the HPAI and its impacts and effects with the intent of establishing world-class standards for HPAI outbreak management. Signed, Harvey Sasaki, September 29th, 2025, Agrasaki Consulting Incorporated, President. In the meantime, the world is actually mourning this. The world is mourning this. It's everywhere, people. And it's just one more scar that Canada has. An open wound right now that the world sees. We've lost all credibility. Not only are we the laughing stock, the embarrassment of democracy, we have shown that we are heartless. We have vets fleeing our country, seeking better medical, as well as Canadians. We have businesses fleeing, entrepreneurs fleeing. Is this the Canada you want? This isn't the Canada that I was born and raised in and that I was so proud to raise my children in. We're in big trouble. And the number one enemy, the biggest reason that this is happening, is propaganda. In order to beat it, you need to like, share, and subscribe. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Until next time, I'm Alias Tagay. You've been watching the Canadian Citizen Journal. Stay informed.